Every day I do a process where I clear negative spiritual influence from my psychoenergetic system. Negative spiritual influence is my term for negative entities, spiritual entities. What I have found is that this universe we live in, this reality, has many layers to it, kind of like layers on an onion. Or if you want to use a radio as a metaphor, it has many different stations on the dial. Those stations are all here, but we don't perceive the one unless we've tuned into it. There are other stations, other layers of reality all around us right now, but we don't usually see them because our physical senses are very specifically tuned in to one station called, physical planet Earth station, because that's what we need as an organism to survive. We need to be tuned in on the physical world. Nearby layers of this onion we live in, this multi-dimensional universe, this radio with many stations, nearby stations are affecting us, sort of like when you've got a station tuned in part way and you can hear two stations at once. You hear someone reading the news, but you also hear some music playing. The Earth is kind of like that. Some of us don't perceive those nearby dimensions. Probably we've never tried to, and we've been told our whole life that they don't exist. And that belief that it doesn't exist kind of filters our experience so that we don't recognize incidents of it bleeding through when they happen. We think it's just the wind. We think it's just imagination or someone else's imagination. But it doesn't mean that those nearby dimensions are not still influencing us. Just as our own subconscious mind influences us even though we're not aware of it, in the same way, nearby dimensions of reality influence us even though we're not aware of it. And in those nearby dimensions, it's just like Earth. There's beings that want to help us. There's beings that want to hurt us. There's beings that don't care one way or the other. They're just trying to do their thing. And everything in between. In my experience over many decades now, there are beings in nearby dimensions who make it their job to mess with humans negatively. And we can get into why they would want to do this. I think that's a worthwhile discussion. Why would they bother with us? I don't know. There seems to be a campaign against human beings to pull us off the path of love and wisdom and kindness and connection with each other and with the biosphere and with the divine. There seems to be a campaign to make us miserable and disconnected and afraid. And these beings are only doing to us what has been done to them. They are miserable and disconnected and afraid. And if you've ever met someone in your life, a human being, who is deeply miserable and jealous and bitter, then you'll see that that person, whether they mean to or not, they end up creating or trying to create those same feelings in you. They will subtly try to sabotage your life, or sometimes not subtly, sometimes very overtly they will try to sabotage your life. They're empty inside. They're jealous of people who are not empty, and they want to create that emptiness in them so that they don't feel so empty and alone. Misery loves company. You've heard that one? Well, there are miserable beings in nearby dimensions, and they want company. They want your company. The only pleasure they know how to experience is the pleasure of destroying, the pleasure of tearing things down, knocking people off course, spoiling. There are spiritual entities like that. And I contacted one of them this morning in meditation in me. Every day I do a clearing to remove those kinds of entities from my space, but they always come back, or they almost always come back. And so the question becomes, why are they coming back? Why am I letting them in? Because they can't really infect us unless we're letting them in somehow. Usually we do this unconsciously. After I'd cleared out these negative entities, I asked my own psyche, are there any parts inside of me that want negative entities to join up with my psyche and influence me? Is there any part of me that wants a negative relationship? Because up here in my clarity, I don't want that. I don't want a negative entity influencing me. They make us miserable. I know that. Why would I want that, right? Well, there are wounded parts of me that do want it. Just like if I've been involved with a woman romantically and she's not in good shape and she's doing things that hurt me, there might be a part of me that still wants her to be in my life because I'm lonely, I'm desperate, I have a negative belief that this is how all women are, so there's nothing I can do about it, and on and on and on. There might be a wounded part of me that gets something from the negative relationship with this woman. Well, the same thing can happen with spiritual entities. We might be getting something from our connection with them. That's why we let them in. That's why we give them power over our lives to some degree. So recently I've started asking myself, is there any part of me that wants negative entities in my life influencing me? Is there any part of me that is sad or upset that I've just cleared negative entities out of my personal space? And there was a voice that stepped forward, and it was upset that I had cleared negative entities out because it has a relationship with one of them. And so without any judgment, I asked that part of me to speak and share what it was thinking. And it told me something very interesting. It said, it's upset that I removed this entity because this entity makes it feel strong. This entity displays a lot of resolve and strength. And this part of me doesn't trust me to have that kind of resolve and strength. That part of me said that I haven't taken good care of my life. I've let things fall to the wayside. I have mismanaged my life in certain ways. It doesn't trust me. This part of me doesn't trust me, the whole psychological system, to take care of it. And so when this negative entity comes in and it's showing strength and resolve, there's this part of my own psyche that thinks, wow, I need to align with this guy because he's got the thing that Ellis is missing. He's got that strength that I need because Ellis isn't stepping up to the plate. He's been a real disappointment. So this part of my own psyche told me that. And I told it, naturally, I said, well, you shut the heck up and go away because that's just rude. No, I didn't say that to that part of me. I thanked it for sharing how it felt. And I said, you have a point. I can find what you're saying. There are ways that Ellis, that I have not managed my life well. I have let things fall to the wayside. I haven't stepped up to the plate in certain ways. It's not the total story, but I can definitely find part of the story like that. And so then I asked that part of me, how does this being make you feel? When you're connecting with him, when you're choosing him over us, the Ellis system, how does he make you feel? Do you feel happier? Do you feel more peace and connection with us and with the biosphere and with the divine and with other people? Do you feel stronger and more at peace and happier and more joyful? And it was very interesting what this part of me said. In fact, it didn't say it, it shared the image of how it feels when it's with this negative entity. And what I saw was this negative being coming in and sort of promising strength and telling this part of my psyche that it was very special. This negative entity was telling this part of me that it's him and it against the world. We could say that this entity was the demon known as us versus them. You and me, kid. It's you and me against the world. And the reason I've chosen you, kid, is because you're special. You've got something the others don't have. That's why I'm investing my time in you. The demon known as us versus them. I really want to emphasize that because that demon is whispering into everyone's mind right now. When I look at society, that is a message coming to us. Don't go into love. Don't go into unity with this total system or with your fellow human beings. You're special. You're better. You're good. You've got something that they don't have. And it's you and me against them. That's not real strength. That is how a narcissist isolates you from your support network, making you feel special, but then also getting control over you and making you more and more isolated and dependent on them. So my job now is to stay in contact with this part of me that doesn't trust me. And understandably so. It has reasons, and I validate those reasons. But I'm not going to make it feel isolated. I'm not going to cut it off from its support network. What I'm offering it is unity with the whole system. And that's my job as the self of Ellis, as sort of the unifying principle of my psyche. It's my job to hold a loving, strong space for all of those voices inside of me, all those parts that are part of me, and to convince those parts of me that I am a better host than negative external spiritual influences that might come in and kind of offer candy. Come into my van. I've got some candy for you. That's kind of how they operate. And it's a trick. As Robert Falconer said, these negative influences leave us feeling weaker. They might promise us strength. They might model a kind of strength, but they end up leaving us feeling weaker. Whereas our self-energy, our true nature, leaves us feeling stronger. And parts of ourselves that are alienated, they will prefer our real self over negative entities if we can offer them that choice and let them feel the difference. They will want to come back home because home just feels better. Guys, if you're not paying attention to this part of your own psychology, your own spirituality, if you're not looking at what I'm talking about in yourself, then I think you are being influenced without you knowing it. What I'm talking about here is a missing piece of human psychology that we've not only not been taught by academic mainstream psychiatry and psychology, but we've been taught that it does not exist. And even worse, we get ridiculed if we try to talk about it. We get prescribed medications that severely alter our brain chemistry, and we get labeled mentally ill if we try to talk about it. We've got a system, a mental health care industry that profits on us being unhappy and unwell, and it attacks and punishes us if we want to talk about an aspect of reality that all of our ancestors believed in. If we go back prior to 200 years ago, no matter where they lived on the planet, the overwhelming majority of human beings in our 300,000 year history on planet Earth has understood and experienced and developed methods for working with these nearby dimensions that influence us. Now, of course, some of those traditions are filled with superstition and false ideas and rigid dogmas that do not evolve as our understanding grows as a species. And that needs to change. But the solution to that is not to displace those traditions with a philosophy of mechanistic materialism that mainstream science has adopted. We need a science that incorporates and integrates our spiritual understanding, our understanding of multiple dimensions. They need to come back together, and we need to be applying critical thinking and the scientific method to spirituality, not ridiculing it and banishing it from the room. Science has canceled spirituality, canceling things, shouting them down, laughing at them, and kicking them out of the room is not a logical response. It is a negative emotional peer pressure and bullying response. It's never an intellectual response. It's an emotional response. And we need to put truth ahead of our incredulity. Science shouldn't behave like teenagers in the hallway shunning someone who doesn't have the right clothes. Let me know what you think in the comments. Happy to answer questions there, share more of my perspective.